So turns out today my soul wanted to channel. I tried to say to my soul, I don't really have time. I'm quite busy today. But my soul really needed to speak. So I thought I'd honour that and make time for it and just let myself channel what was coming in today and what was coming in thick and strong. And I wonder whether it's because we've just launched through some really busy times of equinoxes, and today feels like it's full of a lot of energy. And also going through Friday the 13th and having some strange, mystical, weird experiences. But what I felt like I really wanted to talk into today was a lot of storytelling and magic, and also archetypes and what that means as we travel through what we are told is our myths. But actually, what I feel like we're doing is reclaiming our truths. So let me take myself as an example. I'm currently writing a play called The Witch, the Bitch, the Whore Was Your Angel. So there is a lot of labels and archetypes in that very title. And I fell in love with it. It was actually Cara Gilligan who put the witch, the bitch, and the whore on the Magdalene archetypes that I first sort of really listened into those labels and what they meant. And then for me, incorporating those labels as a woman, as a healer, as a divine feminine, and also feeling into everything that we've been named. Because for me, I've been trained in angelic consciousness. That's where I come from as a healer. And I've had a really big journey of going through what that means. And that means understanding that that is also a fallen lineage, and a lineage that needs to be resurrected today. So it feels huge for me. I've taught many things around the angelic consciousness because I was in tuned in it, and because I felt into real trickster energy into it. But rather than coming full circle and disowning my lineage, I came in and wanted to dive deeper into the angelic consciousness, because this is pure frequency. This is spirit. This is like higher wisdom. And however you believe angelic consciousness, I'm not one for Bible teachings myself, but I feel into that angelics are a frequency. And I'm not really with the whole of the new age movement, because I think some of it is very drop paradigm. But for me, when I tune in and work with angelic frequency, it's higher light, higher love, and a frequency of support. So I'm using the name angel, but to me, it's frequency. And this is what many teachings knew ancient Egypt understood about the magical angelic consciousness, and they taught it in different ways. Their access point was the 10 bodies of light, which recognize different light bodies. But a lot of their figures and gods and goddesses they worship, many of them have wings, and that was associated with this higher wisdom from spirit. And then that wisdom from spirit was stolen in many places and taken and harvested and used and abused. And that is why we have some of the biggest fallen consciousness being angels, like Luciferian energy. The light bearer, the light bringer is what his name means. I would feel into it a little bit further about the light stealer taking the light. Maybe his soul contract was to bring the light, but a Luciferian energy means take for the self. Luciferian, while it is a freedom seeker energy, incorporated in that energy is also do what thou wilt, which was made very famous by Aleister Crowley, is the whole of the law. Do what you want. You are free, sovereign being. And whilst I really support free will, I support free will for all. And there is a fallen consciousness in angelics that have held this higher light, that have abused that light and sold that light down the river. So it's a big reclamation coming back to angelic consciousness for someone like me, but I want to speak into all of those archetypes today because I am first and foremost a soul storyteller, and I'm working with a collective of other people who also are soul storytellers. And out there, we look at our myths and our archetypes and our legends and our stories that are given to us down the ages from other people. And it's really important what stories you're tapping into and what stories you're using, because as a sacred storyteller myself, I have learned that I need to reach into the higher consciousness to download my stories, because there is a collective consciousness, or what some call a hive mind, where we're all tapping into the programs and the fallen consciousness. And then there's this higher self, higher wisdom, higher consciousness, which many of the angelic consciousness vibrates with. And when I'm working as a healer, this is the realm I'm bringing down. And also the realm I'm working in reverence with in spirit, and to work through my sacred theatre work. 5D theatre is set up to pull down the higher dimensions and bring soul activation, soul awakening, soul shakening, activism through its theatre, and activism for the higher light, the source, the big I am that we all resonate with at our core, those of us with souls. Those of us with souls. And so I want to speak into these archetypes because I think it's really important for us on the soul's journey to know which archetypes we're playing out, and when we can release them, we learn from them and then let them go, and also to paint and pull in our own archetypes, not ones that are put out there and placed on us from other people, which for me was very much my journey through witch, bitch, and whore, and even angel, that it was placed on me by other people. And actually, what does those labels mean to me? And inevitably, how can I fly free above all the labels that society has cast on me? So we'll take the witch as the first example. Huge reckoning in the word witch. I mean, I have gone through the witch's wheel of what it means to be witched, starting at the point where I was like, I am not a witch. Witches to me meant ugly, haggard, evil. I just had all those connotations. So whilst I was stepping into being spiritual, and people thought of me as a witch because they were endowing me with the term witch, at the time I was not ready to receive that, and I didn't want to be called a witch. And then I moved gently on to reclamation of the word witch. I was a feminist at the time. I was fierce feminist, and I was going to take that label, change it in the dictionary, and reclaim what it meant to be a magical witch. And I felt that that was a good, empowered thing to do. But then it kind of moved on to where I realized that just suddenly was like, "Woo, am I recording?" while I'm channeling. 3D moment. Yeah, so I moved into awareness of the witch as beyond that. Like, actually, witches were more than this label. What were they actually doing? What was their practice? Who were they? And then I stepped into the witch as the medium. And I realized that these laws were put against us to stop our craft and to make us scared of who we were, because the witches, when I looked into the history of the cunning folk and I looked into my own, her story inside my soul story, the mystery, my story, was that I found that there was what was cast as a witch, what was named as a witch, was actually the ones that worked with spirit, that always worked with spirit. So you can call them witches, shamans, mediums, cunning folk, all of those labels, all of those archetypes placed on them. But I was one working in devotion with spirit. And when I really realized this, it was when I read an article from that had been written, and a quote from my great-grandfather, Cecil Husk, who was a medium, who I spoke about before on 5D Living. And he'd said, "I'm not Lucifer. They cast me as this demon, this devil, the labels again, the archetypes placed on someone. But I am actually just somebody that works with spirit, and I think we can all do this. And he had that problem because he was working in the early 19th century and just before. And because there was these laws about witchcraft in place, people were fearing those that worked with spirit. It wasn't easy to work in that way. And you got a lot of things chucked at you. And later, in the 1950s, they brought in the Fraudulent Mediums Act. So we had the same again. Us healers as frauds, and we had to defend ourselves all the time. And actually, I always pose the question, was it really the mediums that were frauds? And of course, there are some that are posing as mediums and using it as entertainment and not taking the sacredness of working with spirit as seriously as they should. I see that, I witness that. But there are many, many beautiful mediums that are really working with divine spirit and bringing truth through more than anything. Truth that is getting silence left, right and centre. But they are still bringing the truth of spirit through. Because we can all do that. And that was what my great-grandfather was bringing through. Look, this exists and we can do that. We don't have to go to something external. And that's certainly my own journey through what it means to be a soul-embodied leader today, that it's telling everyone that you are a soul-embodied leader too. Ooh. And still, we don't need that label or that archetype. But if it feels a good frequency, that's when to use names. And that was the learning, because then I moved on to the other stage of witch, and I was horrified by what was done in the name of witchcraft. And because I've been living so long as a self-proclaimed witch and avoiding the darkness and the Satanism and the disgusting acts in the name of witch, I felt that it then became my duty to speak out about this, that there are healers and harmers, and both of those exist in the paradigm of witch, and I couldn't ignore it, because half of what we were doing down the ages, down the ancestry line, was protecting those that harmed in the name of witchcraft. That was always the work that I was weaving on my soul's journey, and still what I do today. Whew. It's like, no, I've got to witness this. I've got to understand this was all done in the name of witchcraft. And so I spent a long time there really feeling into the label of witch and how harmful it was to me, that I was carrying this abuse of magic and witnessing it and calling myself a witch. And then something wonderful happened. I was at the Witches Rise Up retreat last weekend with the wonderful Ema, who we collaborate beautifully with, bringing in the light and the dark. And for me, she's always had a way of anchoring in the archetype of witch in a way that feels sovereign, in a way that feels ancient, and a way that feels like knowing in my bones. And what happened to me on that workshop is I ended up leaving the label witch and bringing in fairy magic. And what this meant to me was not some fairy magic that I've understood through books or in my soul, even though there is an ancient knowing of fairy magic. But fairy magic to me is who I truly was and am, at a little child magical way. And that's how I first understood magical wisdom in this lifetime. I got on stage when I was about 6 years old, and I dressed up as a blue fairy from Pinocchio, and that was the role I was given, the archetype, the character I stepped into on stage. And I remember my dad making me these beautiful wings. He was such a craftsman, a builder, and he just made them. And my mum made me this beautiful outfit. She was a dressmaker. And so I got to stand on that stage. It was in Luton Library Theatre. And because I was so small, it felt so big and so wondrous and so magical. And I got to stand there and spread these wings that I had and show people magic. And my dance teacher said to me, you can just go on stage. I was all by myself and improvise. And this was when I really found dance, because I struggled to pick up dance routines because I couldn't always remember everything perfectly because I was dyslexic. I am dyslexic-ish. That's another label I kind of put on and take off when it limits me, because I know the dyslexic as the master channelers. So you could call me dyslexic or a master channeler, depending what you want to feel into, what frequency works. I like master channeler. And so I would get on stage without my routine, being free to fly. So I always remember that dance routine that wasn't a routine because it just had me being free to fly with my wings. And my beautiful blue fairy outfit that my mum had lovingly crafted. And I got to stand on stage and spread my wings and show people magic. And to some, they might not have seen the magic in my hands. They might not have witnessed it. But I knew it was there, and I could feel it moving in my hands, dancing around me. And it was such a wonder to get on stage and spread the magic. And so through all of those archetypes, I had led myself back to who I am today. I am the magical theatre maker. I am here to bring magical realism to the modern world through stories, theatre, and magic. And this felt such a wonderful, freeing reclamation. And so I invite you, and I'm doing this with my Channel Your Soul Story course at the moment. We're just about to step into archetypes and magic and supernatural ability, because this has got so much to do with storytelling, reclaiming that craft, because in storytelling there is a real fallen paradigm which I have witnessed, and it breaks my heart and soul as a storyteller to watch how magic is used, because you can use programming. They are called TV programs for a reason. It's called a channel, a TV channel, for a reason. Hollywood comes from Druid magic, a Hollywood wand. It's on sacred lands. All of these are the understanding of magic and the mystery. And I know some people that walk onto stage and clear it, like myself, and some people that are channeling the bigger magic and mystery. And you can channel that for the dark and for the light. And that's why it's so important that we see the spell that's cast, because the danger of tapping into fallen consciousness channels or programs is that they're using your sleep state, your hypnotized state, your dreaming state, as you go into the relaxed state to watch something, to reprogram you with something else, to use their channel to show you the story. And that is how we can get stuck with the old myths, the old storytelling. Whereas magical, activating activism theatre storytelling is to wake and shake and remind you who you truly are on a soul level. And so whilst I found my blue fairy again, I also found the ancient wisdom of the storytellers. And I really feel that the time is now for us, many of us, to step into the story, not only of our life, but to retell the story, reweave the mystery, the history, the her story, and bring these new stories into being, reclaim the ancient knowledge. Because it has been stolen and taken. And I want to talk into the archetype of the whore and the bitch, the witch, bitch, whore. You know, I have been labeled in my lifetime as a bitch, for sure. I never liked it. it was always used as name calling against me as a woman. Now, what I know, I don't like bitching. I think that's casting a spell and putting negative energy on people. And while I am living on this earth in this fallen paradigm and doing the best that I can, what I don't support is negative speech and trolling and attacking. So I always try and feed back with a higher level response. And I feel that we all should. But with that being said, I also know that there's a paradigm out there that's stopping free speech. I think it's up to us to say what we want to say, but choose it from a place of freedom and sovereignty, but not through silencing and shutting down and saying you can't speak. I welcome all speech, but most of all, I welcome healthy debate, communication, understanding new points of view. And for me, calling someone a bitch is shutting something down. And bitching is shutting people down because it's talking behind backs, which I've never really appreciated. I think we should all be free to speak. And hopefully through that communication, raise the consciousness. So I'm going to turn that bitch comment into empowered speech. Free speech for everyone, because if we all have free speech everywhere and we can all freely communicate and there's no shut down channels, we're going to learn more, we're going to activate souls, and we're going to really step into what's true, because how I feel into the frequency of truth is exactly that. I take a moment and I feel into the frequency of what's coming at me. And if it doesn't feel good and honest and soul activating and true, it's not for me. And the thing is, you can shut down as many channels as you like, but we can still feel into each other on a soul level. This is the tribe. So if there's one great empowerment to take away, is to activate your soul, your knowledge, and then hopefully speak about it, step into it, release it out into the world, and write your precious soul story, if that's the path that you're on, of the sacred soul storyteller, because the time is now. And then I wanted to speak into the whore archetype. Ooh, is this a big one being cast on the woman? And it always has been. And I grew up in a school where you were either named a slut or you were named tight. Beautiful. So us women had these, us little girls had these archetypes that we were fighting against. And I had a best friend that was named the slut, and I was named the tight one. And I had to own that identity, because that got me liked and that got her disregarded. So I learned from her that that was the way to be. But nobody anywhere was teaching me about sacred sexuality. And are they still now in schools? I don't think so. I don't even know they know how to hold that frequency of what that is. And the bigger wisdom that taught me about sacred sexuality was waking up to my soul's consciousness, that I'd knew all about Egyptian Tantra. And no one taught me that in a book. No one taught me that out there anywhere. Yes, some people helped awaken it and what that could be, but what I learned was from my soul's wisdom. And this is why I always come back to what our soul knows. Our soul knows a lot. It's lived many lifetimes, and that is the wisdom. And my soul remembered what real sacred sexuality was, and that it was between the masculine and feminine. And while some of our work is uniting that in us, I saw that in sacred partnership between a relationship, and that we could actually come into balance and heal the world and the lands through that union. And I had to wonder how we've come so far from falling from that, and why we've been programmed to come away from that. That divine masculine and divine feminine in union, dancing together energetically and rhythmically with their bodies. That is sacred sex. It's witnessing. Whew. And instead, there's many that get planted with the label of whore and even the label of sacred prostitution. But for me, I feel into that, and I feel like any way that the body is sold isn't sacred unless it's honoured in reverence. And so for me, the paradigm's fallen because unless the body is honoured in reverence, then it's selling out the spirit. And I went to Crossbones in London this week where there was basically it's a burial ground where a lot of prostitutes' bodies were dumped because they weren't treated as sacred. They couldn't be buried with the others, and there's said to be children there who'd died of illnesses and they couldn't be buried with the others. And I sat on the ground and the land there and felt into it, and the energy felt awful, and it felt like there were souls trapped there. And I thought, what can I do? And what I ended up doing on that land was speaking about the dark agenda and activism, and speaking into where I saw the fallen paradigm and the different things that are being supported that aren't true to the soul. And I realized that the souls on that land, the sacred souls, whatever you wanted to call them, who deserve more and that weren't in a society that was set up to support them, actually wanted me to stand, sit, be on that land and speak into what was true and sacred. And so partly for them, I am speaking into the template of whore and reclamation of the sacred female body. And how it should be revered, and how all of those souls buried their land sacred because they're sacred. So putting them under that concrete, putting them away, outcasting them was never okay. But the thing is, we look back on history and think, oh, we've learned. I don't feel so. I feel we keep turning around the same old groups and divide this, divide that. And the divisions come in many, many ways. And the labels and the old archetypes. And actually we need to break free of all of those, all of them, to be our true soul selves and honour our soul. And however we work, whatever we do in life, does not matter as long as we're honouring our souls and the soul in everybody else. And if you ain't got a soul, then we're in trouble. And that is why soul's consciousness is an activism in itself. Because it takes a lot of knowledge and wisdom to really see souls, because we're taught they don't exist. And that is such a dangerous paradigm to go down. That is transhumanism. There is no spirit. The spirit is in the machine. Merge yourself with machine. That will heal you. Let's genetically modify things. Let's not be in reverence of the body and what it's capable of. Let's be inorganic to the human spirit and soul. And meanwhile, that means the soul is being taken and harvested and stolen and broken and traumatized, when really the soul wants to come back into the body and the living and the knowing. And I just needed to speak today into the reverence of the soul. And so with all that being said, honouring the soul and the storytellers, I wanted to speak into why I speak about the dark so reverently, and I bring it into all of my work. And as I walk the witch's wheel through the year on the sacred portal dates, And it's an offering I'm offering with Ema at the moment as we're reclaiming Samhain, reclaiming the equinoxes, reclaiming all those seasonal things. It's so important to do it because from a soul's level, I see what was stolen. And from my soul's level, I've witnessed what was taken from me when I was just trying to work with the light. And I've seen the soul being ejected out of humanity. And I can see if we don't hold the soul in reverence, that will can happen again, because that is the agenda that's trying to play out. So I will speak on the sacred portals and I will witness the destruction hand in hand with the light that's coming in so strongly at this time. And so I urge you to join us in this work and this will. And we have a really powerful portal coming up for Samhain. But if that doesn't feel like your call, or you don't feel like you're one of these sacred storytellers, and if you are, bring your stories home. And if you need help with that, I will be running this sacred course again in the new year, because it's been such a powerful portal to activate. And myself, I'm still going to be birthing my stories into the world, because the time is now. And it's time to wake up to what magical theatre can be. And I know that that's part of my purpose. But if you can just do anything, one thing for this amazing cause, it's to look inside your soul and find the truth from there. And that's a simple act of sitting in stillness and listening. And listening. And listening beyond the chatter, listening beyond the programming, and listening until you get to your truth. And that is one simple, amazing activation you can do for yourself today or every day. And then beyond that, to bring the dark to the light of your consciousness is to step in with a little honesty about the fallen paradigm and any way it's got its hooks into you, with thoughts of that you're not enough, that you can't take center stage, that you can't shine your light as bright, that you can't speak to souls like I can. You can. You absolutely can. And to witness all that darkness playing out, and to see that maybe beyond you it's also playing out in other people, that they're being entrapped by things, that they're being pulled in by this agenda. And the only reason we get pulled in is because we're not gently listening to our soul's truth. And that some of us have got an even bigger journey, that we're exposers. We shine a light on the darkness for others to see. And for all of those soul sisters and brothers, I salute you. You're my tribe, and thank you for doing the work. And not enough people are thanking you. So seriously, thank you. And shine brightly, because the world needs you. The world needs the storytellers, the exposers, the soul activators, the truthers, the magical practitioners that are working for the light, the higher light angels to come and work with us all. And it needs your soul and your part of the story, so we can break apart the archetypes and the myths and the old legends that perhaps weren't true anyway. And with that, my soul is now happy.